On April 18, 2025, the United States launched airstrikes on the Ras Issa oil port in Hodeidah, Yemen. This critical port, a lifeline for fuel imports to Houthi-controlled areas, became the site of devastating destruction. Houthi officials declared that 74 civilians were killed and another 171 were wounded. The attack immediately drew condemnation and sparked protests. World leaders and humanitarian organizations expressed outrage at the civilian casualties. The attack on Ras Issa came amidst a surge in U.S. military activity in Yemen. Since January 2024, the U.S. has conducted a bombing campaign against Houthi targets. The intensity of these strikes escalated significantly on March 15, 2025, with a deadly offensive that claimed the lives of 53 people. The Ras Issa attack marked a new low in the conflict, due to the high civilian death toll and the targeting of critical infrastructure. The war has devastated Yemen, causing widespread displacement, famine, and disease. The U.S. government justified the airstrikes as a necessary measure to disrupt the Houthi rebels' fuel supply and finances. The Pentagon asserted that the Ras Issa port was a crucial hub for the Houthis to import fuel, which they used to fund their military operations. By striking this key infrastructure, the U.S. aimed to cripple the Houthis' ability to wage war. However, the high number of civilian deaths and injuries contradicted these claims, raising serious questions about the accuracy of the intelligence and the proportionality of the attack. The U.S. military portrayed the airstrikes as part of a broader strategy to counter Iranian influence in the region. By targeting the Houthis, the U.S. aimed to send a message of deterrence to Iran and curb its alleged support for the rebels. The airstrikes in Yemen can be seen as part of this broader strategy of pressure and isolation against Iran. The Houthi rebels in Yemen swiftly condemned the U.S. airstrikes on the Ras Issa oil port as a war crime and vowed to retaliate. They accused the U.S. of deliberately targeting civilians and essential infrastructure, further exacerbating the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. In the aftermath of the attack, the Houthis launched a missile towards Israel, a key U.S. ally in the region. While the missile was intercepted, the attack underscored the Houthis' determination to strike back at U.S. interests and allies. Additionally, the Houthis claimed to have shot down a U.S. MQ-9 drone operating in the vicinity, further escalating tensions. The airstrikes sparked widespread protests in Sana'a, the Houthi-controlled capital of Yemen. Thousands of Yemenis took to the streets denouncing the U.S. attacks and demanding an end to the war. The U.S. airstrikes on the Ras Issa oil port drew widespread condemnation from the international community, particularly from countries and organizations critical of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. Iran, a long-standing adversary of the United States, strongly denounced the strikes, labeling them as barbaric acts of aggression and accusing the U.S. of exacerbating the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. Hamas, the Palestinian Islamist group controlling the Gaza Strip, echoed these sentiments, condemning the U.S. for its indiscriminate attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure. The airstrikes further heightened regional tensions, particularly in light of the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the fragile security situation in the Red Sea. Concerns mounted that the strikes could embolden the Houthis to carry out further attacks on international shipping or escalate their missile attacks on Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. The incident underscored the volatile geopolitical landscape in the Middle East, where seemingly isolated incidents can have far-reaching consequences. The U.S. airstrikes on the Ras Issa oil port represent a tragic escalation in the ongoing Yemeni civil war. This conflict, raging since 2014, has plunged the nation into a humanitarian catastrophe. The war pits the Houthi movement, controlling northern Yemen, against the internationally recognized Yemeni government, backed by a Saudi-led coalition. The roots of the conflict are complex, stemming from political instability, economic woes, and sectarian divisions. The Houthis, belonging to the Zaidi Shia sect, launched an offensive in 2014, capturing the capital Sana'a and forcing the government into exile. A Saudi-led coalition intervened in 2015, aiming to restore the ousted government. The U.S., under multiple administrations, has provided significant military support to the Saudi-led coalition. Critics argue that this support has made the U.S. complicit in the coalition's bombing campaign, which has resulted in numerous civilian casualties and violations of international humanitarian law. The war in Yemen has resulted in one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. The international community must prioritize a peaceful resolution to the conflict, ending the suffering of the Yemeni people and preventing further bloodshed.